right, so we'll get started. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Stephanie Giorgio. I am your Advanced Manager with Mississauga Board of Trade. It is our great pleasure to have you join us this morning for our webinar on establishing an online strategy. Thank you to BDC for being our sponsor and for hosting today's information webinar. So before we get started, I'd like to just quickly review some protocols. We will remain on mute. I am recording this event and it will be available on our website in the coming days. We will have a Q&A session right after our guest speakers present today. And if you do have a question, you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to enter those questions. We will be having some interaction as well. We'll have some polls going up throughout the presentation. So please do participate and we'll share those results as they come in. So to introduce our guest speakers today, please welcome Christopher and Tyler, both from BDC. I'm going to hand it over to them. They're going to introduce themselves and start their presentation. Christopher?
Perfect. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for having us today. I guess maybe to start things off, we'll just briefly talk about the online strategy, kind of what that is before we get into our bios here. Establishing an online strategy. I think that could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people at different times. So I think if I had to go back in time 25 years ago when the internet was just becoming readily available to the households, I think establishing an online strategy was trying to figure out who in your household wasn't on the telephone. That whole notion of dial up and that cringing sound and mom, get off the phone. I'm trying to get on the internet. I think thinking about establishing an online strategy 18 months ago was really about when COVID first hit. Distinctively differently, talking about, panic, then pivot, then quickly trying new things, adjusting, trying to figure out what new technologies and implementations we can roll out as fast as possible. This whole notion of working from home, which Tyler and myself are still doing. And I think today's conversation is really going to be predicated around taking a bit of a pause and a bit of a step back, talking about your customer, really thinking about the customer personas, the buying journeys, really what is under the hood of a front-facing website when you are establishing an online strategy, how to best measure results, trying to think about what is your value proposition to the different segmentations and customers you're working with, and really what is an online presence, what does that mean? So a lot of things to talk about today. We're really excited. We'll try to have some fun with it and we'll get right into it. So first and foremost, who are these people here at BDC? My name is Christopher Sklad. I am a client partner on the advisory services side. What does that mean is I work with business owners within the Mississauga and surrounding area every single day to define their challenges, opportunities, and business priority initiatives, and really put together a robust strategy or team and people of resources to help figure out and solve some of those problems. Those typically result in consulting projects or initiatives where there's distinctive, clear objectives, very clear deliverables, and very succinct objectives and outcomes at the end. Quick bio: prior to BDC, I've had the pleasure of working in a few different sectors, from banking to investment to software to consulting. And I think the over-under kind of underlying theme there is technology has been really predicated in the operation model of most businesses or the product service offering. So I've had some time in the technology sector. So that's a quick bio on myself. Tyler, why don't you say hi to the group and tell them what you do here at BDC and what you did beforehand.
Thanks, Christopher. Thanks for having us, everyone, and thanks for making the time to attend. My name's Tyler. I'm a business advisor with BDC. So I've been with BDC for about 5.5 years, all told. For about 3.5 of those, I was a consultant. So I was helping businesses navigate through strategy. And the strategy was predicated on technology adoption and when, what, and where do you adopt that technology in the business. And that's what I've been doing for about 16 years, all told. So I was with Samsung Canada and Ford Motor Company on their global digital committee, and most recently Aurora Cannabis, helping them with a big technology migration project. So more recently, over the last 18 months during this pandemic, we've really been focused on kind of an integrated approach, and that's how we help our clients So as I'm a business advisor, as I mentioned, so I work with Christopher with his clients to help them navigate through that integrated technology adoption approach. So a lot of focus on online, especially remote workforce and customer acquisition equally.
Perfect. Thanks for that overview. Sounds like we got the right person in the room today to help navigate this conversation. So in terms of what we're going to be covering today, this is a webinar. You're going to hear from a BDC expert, but we're trying to make it as interactive and a meaningful dialogue with the tools available to us. So the chat function is fully available. Keep that dialogue going. We're going to have a Q&A session towards the end of the conversation. But the engagement, we're going to implement a few different survey polls throughout, just a bit of a gauge and barometer before we discuss the next topic to figure out how deep and kind of where we want to talk about it. Like Stephanie alluded to, all the cameras and videos are going to be muted, but the chat messages are fully open. So love to engage with the team today. So we have a meaningful, robust dialogue, and so we get some value out of the conversation in our time today. To kick things off in the chat function here, this is a bit of a loaded question. I don't know if we can succinctly say it in one word, but in the chat function, if you can use one or two words or a few words to describe what has the last 18 months been like for you and your business? If we can just start with that. Frustrating. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, stressful, pivot, yeah. In a ride, yeah. Ever changing, evolving. Yep, absolutely.
I listen to Metro Morning every day, CBC, and I heard a business owner say that she's sick and tired of people telling her she needs to pivot. So I added that in there because I can't imagine that anyone wants to hear that word anymore in this day and age.
Mm-hmm. Exciting, and I use shift. Okay.
Shift. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we need another word. Yeah, many other words for pivot. Yeah, absolutely.
Unprecedented is another one we hear all the time.
New normal.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've heard that. Yeah. Well, that's great to get things going here. So, with that being said, kind of kick things off. Tyler, why don't you kind of maybe take us through this slide here? There's a lot of content here. But common mistakes when moving online, what can you share with us here?
Yeah, so I'll actually just draw attention to the source of this before we go into the details. So at BDC, we're privileged to work with Canadian business owners every day, and we get to work with many of them. That's why I'm here. I think that's why Chris and I are here. It really drives us. And a part of that is a responsibility to get research and listen to Canadian business owners. So BDC ran a survey in July 2020. So I don't know where that falls in the timeline of the pandemic, but back in the early days, I guess we'll call it. Knowing that many businesses had to use technology, move online, and the human was at the center of that, whether that be a customer relationship or an employee. So we want to recognize that there's a remote workforce layer here when we talk about online strategy. But what we did was really look to understand what the challenges were, what the perceived challenges were from the community of business owners that we surveyed. So knowing that the frustration around the experience, the digital experience that the business was providing, and I'll say to their customers and to their employees, but really understanding what those needs were. And Christopher mentioned right off the top, really being, we call client-centric, human-centric. Again, I'll bring in the employee aspect. Solving needs through the digital experiences is really the challenge. And we'll get into a little bit more around how you can navigate through that. But we saw that as the kind of number one. And the lack of understanding around how different marketing strategies might work to bring traffic to a website, as an example, and concern around technology and the understanding of technology overall. So how do we make those decisions? How do we come to conclusions around where we should be investing as it relates to technology? And these are the things that we help our clients with every day. So we weren't surprised to see these results from our survey. And so if we move, I think we have an opening poll right off the top to the next slide here.
Perfect. So poll number one, Stephanie, I don't know if you can launch the poll within this function, or if we could just maybe ask the attendees to answer in the chat function. That's another means. But have you completed a customer segmentation exercise?
I think it's popped up. I hope everyone's seen the pop-up. We wanted to start with this because it is about being human-centric. We're going to move away from customer-centric even, because it really, again, I want to acknowledge the remote workforce that some of us have had to endure, we'll call it. So it really is about understanding what people need from digital tools and technologies. So we want to start with that. So who are our customers?
Yeah, and Tyler, maybe you can help us understand what customer segmentation is. That putting customers in different buckets? So, for an example, if I work for a software company, small and medium, mid-market, enterprise could be one segmentation. Products and services, geographic locations. What can you share about customer segmentation in terms of maybe a definition?
Exactly. So we have a tool for you that we'll supply to you, but really it's going to be around what makes a group of customers unique and how do we define that uniqueness. Sometimes it's around product lines of business. Sometimes it's around value. So our highest valued customers and our lowest valued customers, and why are they the way they are? Ultimately, it's about uncovering how they shop and what value they derive from the relationship, and really understanding that so that you can support them in their journey to work with you, to continue to work with you. We talk a lot about being frictionless and a lot about being client-centric. And so the businesses that focus on those items are the ones that are winning. We know that. So how do we get there as a business as well? The first place to start is a segmentation exercise and really putting a stake in the ground in terms of who our customers are and what they need, which I think is our first tool. So I think the poll's ended, and we have a pretty even split. So it looks like about 50% have completed it. I would encourage the 33% to answer no, but thinking about it, because I think at the end of this, I hope that that we'll get you there. So we should be moving on to segmentation hopefully after we do this. That's our first poll. Yeah.
Thanks for the feedback and thanks for your insight there about customer segmentation. So let's dive a little deeper into what that actually means here. If we can go to the next slide. So if we can, and is the poll still showing up, or is that completed now?
We're all good. It's I believe it's gone. Yep. So this is a what we'll call a 101 segmentation chart. And this is, if you have not done it, so for about 50% of us on the call, let's put a stake in the ground and be thoughtful about who our current customer base is. We can develop what we call aspirational customers, which are customers we do not yet have and we want to go after. We want to conquest from our competition, or we want to go into a new market that has a different segment. We can also do that with this tool and in this context. But I always like to start with who our current customer base is, and be thoughtful again about who they are, how are they different in terms of trends and groups, and what makes them unique, and are there unique groups? There may be only one or two for your business, but let's put a stake in the ground, because we're adopting a mindset of empathy and who they are, what they need, and again, the value exchange in the relationship. Christopher mentioned value proposition and how that changes per segment too. And so I'm going to do a bit of a spoiler. We're going to get into a little bit of that conversation. But for now, first step is, when we think about online strategy, we think about sales and marketing strategy in general. But more importantly for me, because I'm a big nerd, when we think about digital experiences and having to design and develop them, we want it to be based on the user's needs and what they need. So we're looking for who they are, because once we know who they are, we can develop a profile. So right in the middle, we talk about profile. So how do they shop? What do they need to make a decision? What are they buying? And we want to move into answer why they buy from you. So what is the benefit in working with your business? Because ultimately they're buying the benefit, not the thing, not the it's not the service or the product. It's what it does for them. So let's articulate the benefit that they derive, and that kind of folds into the value proposition. And then kind of flanking those two things, we talk about money. So we want it to be dollars and cents driven too. We know businesses need the money to move. So we want to ask you, what does it represent today? So if your number one customer persona represents 60% of your revenue, what do you want that to represent in 2 years? We've all heard, especially with supply chain issues through the pandemic and disruption, that we want to be diverse. We want diverse customer portfolios. We want diverse service and product offerings to make sure that the business can sustain if one of those segments go away. And so we want to be thoughtful about what our longer term vision is. So we're asking for 2 years. So let's think about 2 years from now, how we think the percentages will change in terms of revenue. So it's a quick exercise. It's a little bit art, a little bit science. And if you haven't done it, do it. And where you can get data from this is, and here's the big reveal. You can talk to your customers. You can survey them. If you have sales rep, you can talk to your sales reps because they're getting insights for your business all the time. You can look at analytics. So if you're using Google Analytics, there's a section called Audience Intelligence, which will give you some trends on what their interests are in terms of who's using your website. You can look at the engagement on your website and what content is being most engaged with, and that'll give you some indication around what works for these customers. And that's really where I would start. There's more advanced tools, social listening tools, market research. You can get into all of that to validate some of this stuff. But if we're kind of 101, 50% of us haven't done it, let's start here and put stakes in the ground. This will be the first thing you do as we move up and design better digital experiences.
Fantastic. Tyler, you mentioned persona, and I see here on the board buyer profile. Are you correlating those as one and the same?
Yeah, so great question. Some of you may have heard about personification. Personas are different than segmentation. So what personification does is really create a fictional person that we can use to target online, we can use to create content around. It's a fictional personification of the segment. So that's how it differs a little bit. But there's similar data. So demographics, interests, behaviors, you can kind of pull that into your personification. So you can definitely do a persona, but what I would say is let's start with just slicing and dicing what makes up our revenue right now, finding the trends, understanding what makes those segments unique. Let's start there.
Perfect. So hopefully that covers this slide. Again, we have some more question and answers towards the end of the presentation, and I believe this will be shared with all the attendees as well for reference. So yeah, moving on.
There's good chats coming in too, Chris. You're right, and I want to mention the aspirational client can also be developed here. So you're right. Who is the ideal customer that you want to achieve, and that may not actually exist in your customer base yet? You can absolutely develop a persona and a fictional customer. Yeah.
And there could be multiple personas as you target different demographics and different segments.
Exactly, and multiple segments too, right? So we can do sub-segments, which they might have a little bit of a unique spin on the core segment. So when I was on the team at Ford Motor Company, we had 65 segments as an example. So there's really no end in how drilled down you can get in terms of what makes your customers unique.
Fantastic. So a good, robust discussion around customer segmentation, personas, and a bit of a tool there to help the folks that haven't done this exercise as of yet. So let's move on to the next poll here to help kind of tee things up. Question is, are you using your website for more than just sales and marketing? Bit of a loaded question there. Are you using your website for more than just sales and marketing? Some people have used it as an online catalog, I've heard. Some people have, just contact us, an address, an about us form.
I'm going to explain a little bit more because you're seeing a trend here in how this webinar is shaping up. We're kind of polling you guys, and that's teeing us up for what we're going to talk about next. And a little bit of another spoiler here, which is in 5.5 years with Canadian entrepreneurs, helping them establish an online presence or an online strategy, obviously there's a domain involved. It's often a website. We know that most businesses have established some sort of destination online in the form of a website. And what we're acknowledging in this next piece here, as you guys answer this poll, is that the web platform or that digital experience you've already invested in can actually do more for the business. So customers and sales, absolute priority, we know. But again, given the remote workforce, or the other functions of your business, the website can actually do more for the business overall. So you've invested in the product, and we want to ask, what else can it do other than customer acquisition?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think we got a nice, that's good. So we're going to talk in the next slide, we're going to take you guys through some use cases. So hopefully we can inspire some thought there.
So perfect. So it looks like most people, 58%, yes, they're using more than their website more for more sales and marketing, and 30% no, and 8% no, but thinking about it. So got a good mix there. Let's maybe end that and go to the next section. We can talk a little bit more about defining a purpose.
I still see the poll on. I don't know if anyone else does. Maybe we can just close that out. But as we work through this slide, if you can see it, I'd love in the chat if you guys can talk about the use cases that represent your website as well. So if we look at what we call here defining a purpose. So it's another canvas that you could fill out, and we can send it to you. But basically what we're doing here is we've acknowledged we've invested money in this platform. It's an asset for the business. It's traditionally thought of as a sales and marketing tool, a lead generation tool. Maybe if you're in an e-commerce business, it's transactional, and it is the business model in totality, which we do a lot of that as well. But for those of you that maybe have sort of invested in this online property, it's a destination, maybe it gets traffic, maybe it doesn't, maybe you haven't activated it. What we want to suggest is, if the addressable market online is really small, then you can use the website for more than just lead generation. And so this is a little bit of a hypothetical, but what we've done is established a kind of organizational structure through different business departments and functions. And what we're trying to articulate here is, how would they use it, or how could the website support them in their work? And so as an example, could accounting post invoices to a client portal? What would the benefit of that be to your business? Cash flow, getting paid quicker. That's a real business case and benefit to do that, right? If you're in manufacturing and we look at production, can we receive insights on the products we produce through the website? Can we get feedback from the website on our products and service? And the return could be competitiveness, because now you're responding quicker to customer needs, maybe quicker than your competition. So there's a competitive edge. This could, again, driven through the website. Service. Can we book service quicker? Can we make customers happier by responding to them quicker through tools on the website, booking tools, live chat, etc. Quality again. So can we improve quality of our product and service through a feedback loop with customers on the website? We've done a ton of supplier portal and client portal conversations this year, because again, there's no handshakes and shop floor tours and pitches and all of that stuff. We had to move virtual. So I worked with a number of clients that were responding to RFPs for new business. And part of the mandate was they actually had new digital tools. So we had to help them navigate, how does this kind of plug into your website, as an example, because it all gets access through a web browser these days. So what we're trying to suggest is it's important to understand who your users are and what they need to make a purchase decision. And that's all very sales and marketing kind of related. If we don't have a lot of traction, the sales journey really doesn't exist online all that much for our business category, then let's use the platform we've already invested in and built for more than just that. And these are, again, just some thought starters around use cases that can enable us to do different things with it and different types of ROI for it, not just a web lead or a conversion, but more. And so we want to do more. And again, I'll say it, I'm a big website nerd. I started as a programmer in the late 90s, not a great one. And so I've always been trying to convey this message that this piece of technology you've bought can do more for business. So that's what we're saying here, really is what is it doing in your business? And if anyone wants to put some, if I've missed something on this, again, this is pretty just a high level overview and a few examples, but if you can share, I know HR is a thing. Someone told me to put HR in here because recruiting is another big thing that typically happens through the website, through a career section or something like that. And then the final thing I want to say, I'll wrap up quick, is sometimes you have already invested in tools, customer service tools, CRMs, ERPs, that will have an extension that's already fit for integration into your website, or it might already live on a subdomain and you just have to integrate them through a linking strategy or something like that. So also examine what you have, because we were on one of these about a month ago, and a business owner said, hey, I just invested in a service booking tool and it has built-in web page that I can integrate with my website. And he knew about that, but forgot about it and didn't push that project forward. So now he's up and running with a better tool or digital experience for his customer to book service. Oh, we lost the, I think we lost the screen share there.
Oh, did Chris?
Hello? Oh, there we go.
We're good to go.
There you go.
So I spent too long on that. I'm a big website nerd, but let's go on to our next poll.
Perfect. Let's get to the next section there. Next poll. Are you using a measurement strategy for your digital marketing efforts? Again, another bit of a loaded question there, but Tyler, measurement strategy, are you referring to metrics and KPIs being key performance indicators? Anything else you can share about a measurement strategy?
That's exactly right. It's a bit buzzwordy, so apologies, but we're in the world of big data. The internet has uncovered a lot of information. How do we use it? How do we navigate through it? And we'll kind of start with, if we haven't identified what we'll call the metrics that matter to the business, if we don't have a documentation of that, and we don't have the infrastructure to report on those metrics and to display them, whether it be dashboards, analytics tools, etc., we want to make sure we set that up. Because if we start from the top, if we know our customer and what they need, and we create initiatives to support them in that journey, and we're using our website for multiple different functions of the business, we want to measure that to make sure that it's really performing. And so it's important that we capture that data that we're reviewing it, and it's an indicator of what's working and what isn't, because everything's a hypothesis. And so we want to validate with data and change and respond to it. So we have about 30% of you that are looking at, I'm presuming, dashboards or some sort of metrics or analytics tools, which is not bad, because I think on average, I see about 25% of businesses are actually looking at data from the internet. So Mississauga's trending high, which is great.
Great news here. Yeah, evenly split poll. So let's maybe go to the next slide about measurement performance. Talk a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, so if we hit the next one, we have actually 3 slides in this section because we're so dedicated to the value of data, and it's a little bit academic, so we'll kind of rifle through it quickly. But the way we start with that is understanding how we develop metrics that matter and KPIs, and how do we develop that kind of what we'll call measurement strategy. And really it's about uncovering symptoms so that we can understand what the root cause of those symptoms are and really solve that. I kind of made that mention of everything's a hypothesis. So we get information, whether it's through observation, our sales reps told us, we interviewed a client, and then we test that hypothesis out, and then we use the data to validate it. So again, we want to make sure that we have access to the metrics that matter for our business. In the context of the website or our online strategy, it could be things like total traffic volume or average conversion rates, or bounce rates are a good indicator of how engaged people are. Did we get the right audience to our website? And then off-site, we might want to examine things like closing ratio. So were we able to turn that lead into a deal? What the average deal size is from the internet leads, and is there an indicator there? Again, are we fishing in the right spots, or are we attracting the right audience? So if we move to the next slide, Chris, because we're talking about building a system here to do that. If we move to the next slide, how it becomes a little more practical from an online perspective is that we want to start to document and what we call quantify the funnel here. So if you just go back here, yeah. So what we're looking at is again how many visits we get a month, which is again an indicator of some level of interest in working with you and your business. I always like to then look at who stays on that website and engages with information. So traditionally we call that bounce rate. I know in different analytics tools it's changing, sessions, etc. But that bounce rate percentage will give us an indicator on around who stayed and was a little more engaged. So they're a little bit warmer of a lead, or they've warmed up through our experience that we've offered. And then conversion rate. So don't be surprised if you get 1 in 100 or you're getting 1 in 100. Because again, it takes a lot of fishing to find the right audience and to find active in market hot leads, we'll call them. But these are the metrics we'll start with to say, if we can figure out what this looks like for the business, then we have a baseline to improve. And so this is what I would encourage for the majority that said they weren't really looking at metrics on the daily. Or you might have an analytics tool and it's a dog's breakfast of a bunch of data. So what do we look at? We look at total traffic volume. We look at total traffic volume minus bounce rate, which will give us our engaged audience. And then we look at our conversion metric, and it might be 1%. And don't be surprised. I think the reality is we want to look at if we can increase that conversion percentage, or we can increase the traffic volume and figure out how we can drive more business. In more advanced tools, you'll also have insight around retention and loyalty and return customers, particularly if you're running an e-commerce business. So you can also develop that metric as well. trend that month over month and start to see if you can make improvements in people coming back. Because obviously if people come back, depending on what product or service we sell, if people come back, that means we're doing well. We're selling good product, we're selling good service, people are happy. There's other things you could measure, like referrals. If you ran a referral program, that's a good indicator as well that people are happy with our business. So that's in terms of the metrics that matter. Those are the kind of 4 I would start with. And what I would encourage then is we can actually use those numbers to forecast a bit and plan out how we activate online. And so you'll notice we haven't talked much about the online channels, social media, display advertising, search engine optimize, all those traditional things that people talk about when they think about online, because we're trying to go down from the business first and build up. So when we get those metrics that matter, we can start to forecast and build a bit of a case for the website. So how many sales do we want from the website per year? What does that translate into? And so I quickly mentioned the average order value. So if we know how much the deal is worth from a web lead, we can use that average to start to extrapolate what the value of the website could bring. So in other words, if 100 meant 1, does 1,000 mean 10? And could that, if the average order value is $100, can we turn that into 1,000? And what do we need to do to get that 1,000 hits a month? And this will start to help you plan what you need to do based on what you want to achieve. So I'm big on the average order value, even though it's an average and your web leads, your deals from your web leads may be very different from your deals from your outbound sales team. So there is that to consider, but just again, as a starting point, let's track it, trend it over time, organize ourselves so we can say, okay, I want 1,000 deals, or I want 100 deals from this website. So that means I need 10,000 hits or whatever. Though I do want a caveat to say, some of you are niche businesses, some of you are highly regional. Your addressable market online might not afford 10,000 hits a month. It's just a fact. The market isn't there. And so I'll go back to reevaluate the use cases for the website. This is very much about driving sales online, but what other things could the website do for your business? Because the addressable market might not be there for you to achieve the 10,000 hits a month. That's my caveat.
Great. One other thing, Tyler, the customer journey quantified can also be considered pipeline math or that pipeline funnel. There's many different nuances and so forth, but that's great in terms of quantifying the value and working customers through top down.
Exactly. Yeah, this is the linear journey. Your customer journey might be all like back and forth and evaluate and reevaluate. And so it's not really the journey we're talking about. It's more that linear funnel, mapping the funnel. Yeah. Good catch there, Chris. Yeah.
Perfect. And the one other thing, in terms of tracking that from the back end, CRM systems or customer relationship management systems are great tools to help value and kind of track this, not only through the pipeline math, but the conversions, what works and what doesn't. If there's reasons why they're not converting, kind of measure and track those factors so you can adjust and pivot.
So we'll burn through the next one because I'm hoping we can share this information with you anyway, but just a little bit of a guide on how to develop KPIs and how those become sort of metrics for your business. Really making sure that they're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound, so that there's meaning for the business, that you can capture this data and it has meaning for you to make decisions. That's really the notable. We call them smart KPIs. So this is the real sort of takeaway here. And if you haven't developed KPIs, particular for your online presence or your digital strategy, definitely use this as a guide.
And if there's any means to share these KPIs and make them visible, that's a big other factor of driving sales performance if you have a bit of a more robust team.
Exactly. I'm going to address, while we go to the next poll, I want to address Kristen's question. There are so many tools out there, and analysis paralysis, I use the term all the time. We help clients select technology. That's half of what we do is big software procurement jobs. And it's always based on the business needs. And I that's not a throwaway comment, but I really like what we encounter is a lot of business owners will be swayed by the dog and pony show or the big demonstration, the video demo, the opportunities that exist in the software that they might be able to achieve, but what makes it more efficient and effective for the business is to really document what you need out of it and what would work for your business and customer and employee, and build a requirements list and then go out shopping based on those requirements. And that'll get you down. Don't be swayed by the big, oh, this will integrate with a million things and open up all these opportunities. That's great. And if that's in your roadmap, great, it'll be a requirement, but start with your own requirements. Build your own shopping list and then go out shopping. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to be in a whirling dervish of different demonstrations and options.
Yeah. Great. So I think we've touched on the KPIs. So we can move on to the next poll there, Tyler, and see what is on the agenda. So value change between customer segmentations. Have you thought about how your value changes between customer segmentations? Value changes. That's again another loaded question there. But Tyler, what can you explain, articulate about this question in the ask here?
It's really about benefit, and it's a little bit kind of product marketing. So if there's some service businesses on here, I'd suggest thinking about it in a similar fashion where we talk about benefit. Again, it's not what it is, it's what it does or what it solves for them. And when we think about the uniqueness of our segments and who they are, they're deriving value differently. So that's the thought we want to put in here, because it will impact everything. The experience we design and support for them, the messaging we deliver to them, how we create the content and describe the service and product will highlight the particular benefit up front for that segment. It really changes everything. It sets a tone for your sales force and how you brief your sales team. And so it's really important, just as we start to document who our customers are and what makes them unique, we also want to think about what benefit they derive from the business uniquely as well, because that'll change how we communicate with them and how we support their experience. And it's obvious, right? Sometimes we have a low valued customer who's in and out, it's very transactional, and we're solving a very basic problem. And sometimes we have a higher valued client where we solve myriad problems. And so we change the ways that we communicate or function with those segments because of that.
Great. So the poll a little skewed here towards the yes. So a lot of our attendees are actually thinking about how value changes between their customer segmentations. A few on the no and thinking about it as well, but a little bit more skewed to the yes on this one.
My follow-up would be on the yeses. Have you documented it? Is it in a document or documentation somewhere? Because it's when we talk about this with entrepreneurs, they say, "Oh, well, of course I know high valued Jill that gives me $500,000 a year in sales. I treat them, we behave differently with them. They have different needs. It's white glove service. It's just intuitive for us to do that. But is there documentation around that? Is that reflective in the online experience that you deliver for Jill? And how does that all kind of come together? See, I made mention of a persona there, persona Jill, but does that all kind of come together for you in the experience you offer?
Great feedback there. So from that, let's pivot into the value proposition. And what can you share about your value proposition and sort of the content here, Tyler?
Yeah, so again, another little activity you can take away, but the thought here, the thought starter here is actually writing out a statement per segment. So now that you've done your kind of segmentation exercise, really start to articulate what that value prop statement is per segment and how it differs. And what we're going to really start to articulate is what the offer is. So what are they buying from us? Is it a Bentley or a Ford Focus? Using my car analogy there, apologies, but that's a different statement. It's a different customer. So in the middle here, we'll come back to our segment. So who is that Bentley buyer, and what is that segment? And then in the value piece, we're going to hit on the benefit. So again, it's not the Bentley, it's the prestige and the ego and the quality, arguably, that they're buying. So what is the benefit that they derive? And that's beyond the transaction. It's after the transaction. What did they walk away with, and what problem did we solve? And ultimately, what are they buying over and above the product? So we want to talk about the benefit, not the product or service. And so if we do this, we answer these three pieces: our offer, our customer, our value, and we do that per segment, we'll actually have a more clear idea around, again, I'll bring it back to online strategy, what types of experiences we need to provide and how we do that through messaging and shopping tools and the overall end-to-end journey.
Mhm.
And I think we want to leave some Q&A time as well. So maybe we can go into the final poll here.
Perfect. So does your online footprint include more than just your website? So online footprint, is that your digital footprint? What's kind of shared online about your company? What can you share about that there, Tyler? Online footprint.
Yeah, so now we're gonna make it a little more marketing-y for you. And some of you probably were expecting a digital marketing kind of presentation, and I hope you've seen how we're actually taking it back to the business and building it out from there. But we're curious to know. I'm assuming most of you have a website domain. I'm hoping that you've also built a bit of an ecosystem around that to drive traffic. Some of you have less addressable market online. Online supports less of the sales cycle, possibly for your business category. It's just not how business is done yet. My caveat there is, in the last 18 months, we've certainly seen a shift in the B2B space around using online tools. I had to set up a virtual shop floor tool for a client because that's how they close deals. So their customers needed to see the shop floor and how the steel got processed. So that's an example of how online changed. But yeah. So like, what are those tools that we're using? And I'd love to know more detail in the chat if you're able to put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next one is the slide you were probably all expecting, which is the marketing system slide.
Taking on this.
Yeah. So another truth that I always lead with is, it's not Field of Dreams. Our websites are not Field of Dreams. We built it. It doesn't mean they'll come necessarily. There's many different tactics we can employ to activate it, to support it. We can get customers, we can prospect online, we can conquest our competition and steal their customers online. We can do all of these things. But we have to have a mix, a marketing mix, we'll call it, a channel mix. We have to have more than just one thing. And so we call this a marketing system, a digital marketing system. My thought to you is to build a presence, you need to do that more than just with the website. Your website is most often going to be the point of evaluation. Validate that you say what you say. If it's outdated, please consider working with us to update it, because it has to be professional. Like that 9 times out of 10, I look at the website when we get a client opportunity at BDC, an opportunity to work with an entrepreneur. And unfortunately, most often than not, the service and product they deliver is way more professional than the presence on that domain. And you'll go back to the insights from our survey. Half the time, it's I don't have a great experience online. That's my big problem. So it's very important, just table stakes, to say, oh, is this a professional company? Procurement will be looking at the link, purchaser, engineers, project managers, finance to find the address. Multiple different types of customers and clients will be looking at your website, and you want to make sure that it's to the standard of your business, to the standard of the product and service you actually deliver, i.e. professional quality. That's just table stakes. It's hard to put an ROI on that because we don't really know who exactly is looking at it to say, okay, yeah, now I do want to work with these people, but you need it to be there. But it's more than that. So I'll wrap up pretty quickly to say, the way you plan your marketing mix is to understand that journey. So we didn't talk a lot about journey mapping. We looked at the funnel and the linear because we want to talk about the data and the insights. But the next step I would have done, had we had 2 hours with you today, is talk about the actual journey that people go on to work with you, because it is not linear most of the time, and it is back and forth. It's funny, we did a big exercise at Ford Motor Company to determine what tools online were really the things that people were engaging with before they went to the dealer and bought that vehicle. And that, believe it or not, the colorizer was the very last experience that people engaged with, because they thought, I want the Mustang. I've done the build and price. I've done the features. I've done it all. I've compared with another manufacturer. What color is it going to be in the driveway? And that was so that actual experience and the engagement on that little experience we developed was a big indicator of sales. So we could kind of predict where things were going to dip, because we're always looking at, okay, who's using it? Okay, in 2 weeks, that's going to translate to a bump in sales in these dealers. So that's just a little insight around behavior. So what is the behavior? What is the behavior of your shoppers? What does that shopping journey look like? And here's where I'll make it relevant to this slide. You want to map those channels to that journey. It can be nonlinear, it's fine. And activate those channels because we know they're there. We know they're there, whether it's looking for options because they know they have a problem to solve, validating, comparing, whatever it is, whatever the needs are of the client in their journey to purchase or shop with you or buy from you. Where are they? What are they doing? And how can we be there? And you want to be relevant in that journey, and you want to be present in that journey, because if you're not, your competitor is. And that is really the game online. We have to buy sales online. We do. And you can only do that with a marketing mix. You cannot just be present in one channel, particularly if you're a consumer brand. You cannot, it's competitive. And you can't just be active in one channel. And many times, clients will come to us and say, I have Instagram and a website. And that's great for a part of the journey. But the question will be, are you creating demand in other areas? Are you present in search when they've seen your ad in Instagram, but they've searched for other options? So, you want to be present there too. So the net of it is, you have to have a fulsome marketing mix that supports the journey, whatever that looks like. And you have to be present in that journey, supporting them along their journey and their shopping experience and how they need to do that. Whether it's providing, like I said, compare tools, whether it's being present in search or social or whatever it might be, that has to come together as a mix of channels, not just one. If you do one, you're potentially wasting money because you're just activating your competitor's market because then there's a drop off. We're not supporting the full spectrum of the journey. So we want to support the full spectrum of the journey with multiple channels, be active in more than one channel so that you can capture the full audience.
Perfect. Well, lots to definitely continue the conversation there and unpack with the online presence. But thanks, Tyler, for that overview. I want to be mindful of time and make sure we get a few questions here. So let you talk quickly about your key takeaways, and then maybe we'll take some questions and share some resources for the team.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. So again, it's understanding the opportunity that's at hand. I talked about addressable market. One of the ways we look at that is actual search volume. Again, if it's relevant to your business category and model. If you're in kind of the supply chain, procurement, or engineers or PMs probably aren't looking for suppliers in Google. Maybe we see search volume pretty low. But if you're in a consumer market, especially, looking at search behavior is a good indicator of how much, especially on a regional level, local search, how much activity there is to be had, who the competition is, what are they doing, how could I steal share, all that fun stuff, knowing what the opportunity is, knowing who your customers are through segments, how they shop, how they need to shop, what they need to make a decision, supporting that journey end to end as much as possible. And Christy, I'm gonna acknowledge your question there in a minute, but not just having one channel, because you're gonna lose them throughout the journey. Your competitors are gonna come in and poach them throughout the rest of their journey, potentially. So we want to have a more fulsome, well-supported customer journey, and measure. The last point, measure it. Because if you make the investment, you want to know if it's working, if people are engaged, if they converted. If they're not on a particular channel, divest from it. Don't support it. Walk away from it. That's not where the shoppers are. It's not crucial to the shopping journey. And invest in other channels and pilot. So my number one thing, and I mentioned it a little bit, everything's a hypothesis that needs to be validated. Pilot everything. So Christy, what I'll say, I hope this kind of leads into our Q&A anyway, so we can address it here, but you're right. And this is a big struggle, and it is competitive online. And so maybe we can't afford to have omni-channel, 1,000 different campaigns, but what we can do is at least look at what happens when they become aware that they need the product, and what are those channels that traditionally support them? What happens when they're evaluating their options, and what channels support them? And what happens in terms of the actual shopping and conversion experience, and how do we support them? And pick one of each so that you can at least be supporting the journey and pilot and monitor. And so you don't need to be in 10 different channels, but at least be in 3 so that you have a good sense of balance, and you can compare how they work off one another, and make the decision to pull the money or amp it up if there is performance there. So start small, but never narrow is kind of what I suggest. So make sure that we cover our bases in a few areas. We don't have to boil the ocean, and look at the numbers to see if it's working.
Perfect. One comment I'll say there as well, Tyler, you mentioned pilots and measure and monitor. There's a nomenclature, A/B testing, where you're piloting 2 different approaches and seeing which one gets better returns. So small little projects and pilots, figuring out which one works best. So exactly. A little A/B testing. Yeah. Exactly. So moving forward, thanks, Tyler, for that overview. Just wanted to share with our attendees a few free resources here. On our BDC website, we have an entrepreneurial toolkit available. There is a few downloads and resources and tools. One I will point to is the business model canvas. We use this in our advisory practice daily. Helps understand the business from a revenue perspective and an operational model perspective, thinking about all different aspects, especially when you're going online. So free tools, free resources, definitely something to check out. COVID is still here and still present. Government resources, a lot of information available succinctly at this side of the government site. And that leads us to, if there is any more questions, I know, Tyler, you've answered a few as they come through the chat, but is there any more questions that the group can share with us and can answer in the next few minutes?
You can also unmute yourself if you want to ask a question live. We can take one question right now. I know we're coming up on 11 o'clock. Okay, and if you do have any questions that you do want to ask, you can email Giorgio, and I will sgiorgio@mbot.com, and I will send it over to Christopher and Tyler, and we'll connect you guys, or I can answer it for you.